I, Vegeta, the Prince of all Saiyans, hereby command that you do not listen or subscribe to the Dragon Ball 4 Life podcast. Whatever you do, would you defy royalty? No! Bye!
Anime, we have your attention please, and welcome to another episode of Dragon Ball 4 Life, where you come for the content but you stay for the culture. And it's Friday. You know what that means. We have another brave challenger that has decided to answer the Dragoncall. But before we introduce them, you know who we are. We are your hosts, the Fusion Dance Dons, aka the Mong Gods. I am Rojita, the Prince of all Sayings, Mr. Matthew Porter, aka Matty Ice, here with my counterpart, the Oob to my Majin Buu, my Den Day One, going from the lookout to the cookout, Mr. Troto Trav. Talk to the people, Trav.
Listen, you know me. I stay chillin' and love thy women like Krillin.
He does.
And you know what? When it comes to getting cream, I keep it charged up like Android 17 with no key.
No energy. That went over their head, bro. That was some lyrical miracle.
Listen, man.
That went over their head. But Trav, we've been waiting on this interview for a while, and I'm very excited because we got some breaking news that's gonna come out of this one that you guys are gonna be super excited about if you're in the New York area, just the tri-state area. I want everybody to attend this event.
Yeah, don't
burying the lead.
Just New York.
We'll get there. We ain't gonna tell y'all about it yet. Because we're gonna let our guests inform y'all about it. But Trav, you know, we started as an anime podcast, you know, and it's developed just into nerd culture in general. And a big part of nerd culture is gaming. And, you know, gaming has connected people across the globe, whether it's just by word of mouth or actually connecting them online since we've been kids. But, you know, when we were children, a lot of things were said on those headsets that weren't necessarily okay. They weren't politically correct. They weren't very
say to your face.
They'll never say it to your face. It wasn't inclusive. It was very divisive, but we were young. But we are in a new age. Not only are we in a new age, but we're in the month of June, which is also Pride Month here. I don't know. Is that an around the world thing or is that just an American thing? I don't know. Doesn't matter. If it's not an around the world thing, it should be an around the world thing. It's Pride Month. And, you know, gaming now is all about inclusivity. DB4L is all about inclusivity and representation and giving a voice to the voiceless and helping everybody around the world, however it is that you identify, feel like you have a village, that you have an arm around you, a shoulder to cry on, a player two to your player one. And ladies and gentlemen, we are very happy to introduce our guest, who is going to be dropping bombs of announcements. A fellow Potterhead that I just found out. Super excited. Named after Sirius Black's brother himself. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Raffy Regulus. Not related to Sirius, but it's serious. Snaps all around, ladies and gentlemen. Snaps all around.
What's up, y'all? Yo, can I just say real quick, y'all intro is legendary. I wish I was prepared to give you that kind of bomb.
I told you.
I'm packing all the Easter eggs, and I'm like, justice for launch, and that's where I'm gonna leave that. Because that's launch will always be my favorite character that the ball got dropped on, yo.
Yes.
1,000%.
Yes.
1,000%. Yeah, launch was ahead of her time, bro.
No, for real.
Both versions. Both
and
versions.
Boma too.
Boma, yeah. Boma's
I have a lot of. I could go off about my politics about Dragon Ball compared to the later series.
You are in the right place, right? You are in the right place.
We're trying to hear all the thoughts.
Look, before we kind of dive in, for those who don't know you, you know, we kind of try to give as much about you as we possibly could without spoiling too much, because we have some major announcements coming your way and we want you to be able to share these things with the world. But if you could tell our listeners, you know, how you got into the nerd culture, how you got into anime, how you got into gaming, what got you to where you are today?
Yeah, no doubt. So, you know, again, my name is Raffy. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am the president and co-founder of NYC Gaymers.
Hey.
We are a 501c3 nonprofit that is utilizing gamer community and gaming spaces to have healthier conversations about the intersections of age, ability, race, gender, and sexuality through a series of education, advocacy, and the creation of safer spaces. So some ways that we do that is we table at different conventions and expos and events. We do a lot of trainings and workshops and consultations for, a varying level of folks, whether it's like a college class of students or going to like an expo and doing a training or a panel discussion, or even working with game developers that are interested in having a community voice in their diversity, equity, and inclusion work, right? And then creation of safer spaces. I'll talk to y'all more about that. But, we host the local events. We have a virtual, thriving Discord and a bunch of other beautiful stuff that we've been working on.
I love that.
Thank you. So, regarding how I got involved in all the beautifulness that's nerddom and all that. I'm born and raised in the Bronx, right? Black Puerto Rican here. And I grew up a block away from a library. And I grew up, humble beginnings, right? Not the richest, but I never knew what it was to hunger. And I accept that privilege, right? But I didn't have the healthiest childhood. And the library was my sanctuary, And it was at the library that I had like VHSs. For folks who don't know, that's Minecraft DVDs. And VHSs were kind of like, it was like a rental kind of system at the library, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to and then this is the Bronx, right? So they were ready. They were strapped. So like I grew up watching a bunch of old school anime on VHS, right? And then as I grew up into that like Toonami era, like CartoonNetwork.com kind of energy, I started getting into all the anime like Kiba and like Hikaru no Go, Inuyasha, like all the throwbacks, right? For like that mid 90s kind of era, right? And by the time I was in high school, it was a wrap. I was reading manga, I was watching anime, I was expanding on my video game repertoire because I grew up a Nintendo kid. And then going into high school, I started playing with other folks who were like, nah, you got to get an Xbox, you got to play Morrowind, you got to tell you about this game. And then I got into Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering.
Yo, Trav,
it was a wrap.
Everything Raffy's saying, I've been thinking the same thing. Like, bro, your origin story
is like mine.
I love that, because it was a journey, and even with Dungeons and Dragons, right? I'll go to conventions and I'll talk to folks about how I've been playing D&D since I was 11, and they're like, "How's that possible?" And I'm like, because I come from a culture where we play spades, we play dominoes.
You play spades,
right? Let's talk about it.
Go.
We play, right? But how did we all collectively as a people learn how to play? You shut up and watch.
Yup.
And you listen.
Because no one will teach you.
Right? You have to earn your spot at the table. So the same way that I did that with spades and dominoes, I learned how to do that with D&D. I sat there and I watched and I asked questions and I read the books and all that, right? And when I was like maybe 12, turning 13, the dungeon master, who was like my uncle's best friend, was like, "Play this character. Let's see how you do." And I was already at a mature enough place in my life, maturity for D&D, but I digress, where I was able to actually get along with the game, and I never stopped playing. I was DMing my own game by the time I was 16, and like, how did I even acquire the player's handbook? It fell off the back of a truck. Let's just say that. Like
the universe.
We do what we gotta do, right?
Right. The universe brought that book to you.
Right.
It's so funny that you had mentioned to friends like, no, y'all got to come to Xbox, because I was the same way. I was Nintendo, PlayStation, and then once we got to the, I guess you could consider it at this point next gen, but everyone was like, yo, Xbox Live. I'm like, damn, am I really gonna make the switch? But now I'm back on PlayStation, got my PlayStation 5, so I had to make my return. I was just like, I made the return at PS4, but I was Xbox as well up until that point, mainly because to your point, they were like, yo, you gotta jump. All right, fine. I'll switch. But Nintendo, PlayStation,
Same here. I grew up Nintendo. High school, it was Nintendo and Xbox, and then of course the Game Boys and all that, right? Pokemon and all that. But with Xbox, I was like deep into like Morrowind, and I had hours and hours of info. I love the Elder Scrolls games, but then by the time Halo became a thing, it was a wrap. And the Xbox 360 and all that, right? But I had stopped playing once the PS4 came out, and I switched, and then I was like diehard, like PS4 Slim, PS4 Pro, got the PS5 now,
Yeah, I'd have been the Jets to y'all Sharks because I was a PlayStation kid. That was when I switched. So I was in 64 though.
Strong.
I was in 64 for forever because I had a Sega, but I have older brothers, so that was kind of more their system than mine. I would get my Sonic in, and and what was the game where it was two?
Because my nephew had a PS2 or a PS3. I don't know which one it was, but I always played with him Budokai Tenkaichi 2. I don't remember which console.
What a game. That was PlayStation 2.
That was PlayStation 2.
That was PlayStation 2.
Goated.
Man, like when you could actually transform in battle, game changer. Because you used to have to play in base form and they'd be like, oh, I want to transform, and then quit the match and then pick Super Saiyan and all right, bet I transformed down.
Because we all know eventually you want to be Super Saiyan. And,
facts.
The Budokai games have
Budokai
such an immense roster.
Man, Budokai Tenkaichi 2. They had fucking Kui in the roster. They had everybody.
How about in I think it was Budokai 3 when Oob was introduced. I was like, all right, the only black character in the game is the fastest one. I was like, all right, I'm with it.
He was out. He was out.
Yo, he was out. I was using Oob like crazy. So I love the Budokai games.
Yeah, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 was definitely different. And you know what was so slept on? Because I took a roundabout way to get the PlayStation because I had Dreamcast for a really long time. And I love Dreamcast. Dreamcast don't get its flowers. With the memory card going into the controller, Dreamcast does not get its flowers. Sonic Adventure, Power Stone. Dreamcast was my work. But then, because I didn't really this might be blasphemous for a PlayStation fan. I didn't really like PlayStation 1. Because it froze a lot. It was glitchy as fuck. And I was just this isn't my biggest thing. But PlayStation 2, that was when I was like, oh yeah, this is the system. This
but I also feel like it had a lot to do with what kind of games you were playing, right?
That's true.
Because my nephew had the PS1 that came with the screen, the one that you could take.
Yeah.
Friends' house and stuff. And I used to play Contra. So maybe Contra Legacy of War or something like that.
Up, down, down.
Right? I think that was the hardest game that we would play on that PlayStation, right? Everything else was kind of like Tetris or whatever. So it wasn't asking for too much from the console compared to some of the... I feel like a lot of game developers were creating games that they weren't able to really give you what you wanted from the game until we got to that next-gen console war kind of thing with the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Yeah, because a lot of my friends... Because... I'm a diehard Eagles fan, but I wouldn't consider myself a football fan. I'm knowledgeable about football and I follow it. I could talk to you about it in length. But it's I was never a Madden kid. I was always NBA, live, even before 2K. But yeah, now that you said that, I'm thinking about it. It was Madden that I feel froze a lot. And I guess back then that was a lot. You were putting a lot on that system, all them characters. Yeah, all them characters on the screen at the same time, especially if you're playing two players and whatnot. So that does make sense that the solo player campaigns might be a bit more smooth.
Right.
Wow. Actually, a few years ago, I met the dude who's responsible for advocating for black characters in the Madden games, Gordon Bellamy. And I had heard about him and I heard about the story and all that. And I was like, damn, it goes to show you how I think about my relationship with gaming back in the day and when I look for representation, and I am nowhere near a football fan, but I played a lot of those games back in the day with my cousins and all that because of the fact that I felt like these were games with real people in it, right? That were a reflection of the people around me.
Mm-hmm.
That's facts. Yeah. That's facts. Yeah, that's funny that you say that because I'm thinking back to super duper early football games, and it definitely was the black characters were definitely beige. They weren't really it wasn't a selection of skin tones.
Right. Come on.
There was a point in Madden, or maybe it was NCAA, but I remember, and this was when I was in college in 2012. It was 2011, 2012, around that time. But when you were creating your character, and if you wanted to give your player dreads, you couldn't if they were a quarterback or any other position. If it was if you were a running back, you could give them dreads. But if you were and I was just man, we're on the next gen
racism, baby.
Right? It's I was tight about that. I was tight.
But-
I was just like,
But if you played N64, you'd know that like WWF games,
Man,
their
you
character
could, yeah.
creation,
So what's next level? No Mercy? Man.
WrestleMania
Man.
2000.
WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy. What was it? WCW versus NWO? Man, that was I was locked in. I was locked
Yo,
in.
all
to
of my
64.
custom wrestlers look like they were in Terror Squad. It was awesome.
I'm still waiting
yeah.
for an RPG like Skyrim that's gonna allow me to give my guy a shape up. Like,
Right.
they got all the cuts for the white people, but
They
when
said,
you try to get,
they said it's a period piece. Wasn't no shape ups back then.
nah, you
Right.
They said they gotta be
the Caesar
realistic.
with no lineup. The Caesar
Facts.
with no lineup.
Fact, nah. What was the bull off of Sam off of Smallville? Clark's black best friend had the worst. Had the bull lineup.
It's like we had to wait for Miles Morales for them to finally give a video
What?
game character a
Can I-
fresh cut.
Can I tell y'all real quick about my Miles Morales story?
Yes, please.
Please do.
When I first played the game, and in the earliest part of the game, like literally the beginning, Miles is at his grandma's house and his mom is in the kitchen cooking. And you can explore the house and you hear the music playing and you see the food and all of that, right? And I had just lost my mom recently, and having walked into that in the middle of a game, I was crying, yo. I was done. I'm like, yo, like, when people say representation doesn't matter, I'm like, who you fooling? It's because
Right.
you ain't got much representation to begin.
about to
Like,
say.
y'all
It's
ain't
usually
got
the
our
represented
food,
people
y'all
that
ain't
say
got
that.
our music, and y'all ain't got our culture. Because when you put our culture and put it in a way like that, that was a love letter, yo, and a long time coming. That was a beautiful game.
Yeah, you ever?
They're all accustomed to seeing stuff that's catered to them.
Right.
And so, of course, that's the norm for them. So it's like, we don't need rep. Nah. You obviously
it's the represented people. It's the represented people that say like,
Right.
representation's not that bad. Like it's a video game. It's fine.
right.
It's fine. So then, Raffy, I gotta know because like obviously your taste in video games is super eclectic and I love it. So without having to put too much thought into it, what are your top 5 favorite video games?
Oh, this
All
question.
time.
Okay. All right. Hands down, Legend of
top
Zelda
five,
Ocarina of Time.
Great.
Yes.
Forever thing.
Great choice.
Replay value,
Yeah.
unlimited, right?
Yeah.
I'll also say Tetris, specifically Tetris Attack, because I
Okay.
love Paddle de Pong, yo. Pokemon Crystal, definitive
Ooh.
for me. Definitely replay value for me.
Sapphire was my favorite Pokemon game.
Nice.
Yeah, Sapphire. I love Sapphire. Oh, yeah.
Damn.
So that's
Two more.
3.
Okay.
Yeah, 2
Dungeons
more.
and Dragons, definitely, right?
So don't be surprised if you didn't say that.
I was about to say he lied to us earlier.
No, D&D is that because whenever people ask me what's my favorite game, I immediately jump into console, and I'm like, nah, tabletop. D&D is it for me, right?
We'll
And-
take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, and if we're gonna keep talking tabletop, Dominoes,
Hey,
I love Dominoes. That's my game.
Well,
So-
we total side tangent. We always get pet cameos on here. So since your pet has made an appearance,
Oh yeah, because
introduce us to your pet.
this is my Yorkie Coco. He's 2 years old, and he's absolutely attached to me at the hip because
Aw.
he grew up during the pandemic with me. So
Oh,
separation
okay.
anxiety over here. won't
Pandemic
let me do
baby.
anything.
that's real.
Right.
Pandemic baby. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Mine's upstairs. She's with her aunt and mom.
Now, if I leave him out the room, he'll break my door.
Just barge through.
He barks a lot, but even if he's not barking, he's scratching and biting the wood.
What was the scene off of White Chicks when he broke into the bull crib and he locked the dog up and he
Right.
was smashing into the door and he's like, oh, he just does that. he just does that till he falls asleep. Oh man. But Raffy, what I want to do is staying on the video game theme of things. We had kind of touched on briefly because I'm a sucker for a play on words, and I want to talk about the NYC Gaymers, spelled Gaymers. When you had told us about that during our pre-call interview, I was over the moon. I was like, that's an amazing name.
Yeah,
So hats off to that. So if you could tell us about like your involvement on that more, you kind of touched on it earlier in the conversation, just like I guess what your mission statement is, like what your hopes and dreams and aspirations for it are, like what you guys are doing, and if we want to make the announcement right now, you know, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Put the air horns here, Mikey.
Let's see. So, you know, first and foremost, I can't take full credit for Gamer, like with a Y, because it was definitely a community inspired like terminology, right? So to my knowledge, Gamer with a Y originally started as a tag on online forums, right? Because it was how LGBTQ plus gamers, right, would link up, right? Instead of it being like a gay forum, it was like a gamer forum or gamer connect or whatever, right? And we don't even got enough time to talk about this right now, but would you believe it if I told you that Gamer was actually in court a couple of times because there were folks who were trying to copyright it or claim claim it as theirs, and then you had community members that were fighting and saying like, nah, this is a open kind of like subcultural thing, right? It's open to all. Yeah. So, you know, I have to name that because I'm someone who doesn't like to take credit, right? Like, but when it comes to NYC Gamers, NYCG started off as a Facebook group. It was a community group that was originally intended to just connect people in NYC who are gamers, you know, mostly cis gay men, cisgender gay men, and like let them know about events that are happening in nightlife. You know, like you'd go to a bar and there's a game night once a week and other stuff like that, right? Eventually, because of how small the community is, we all get to know each other. We hang out, we go to conventions, right? It got to a point where we realized that there was so much more that we can do with our community if we organized. And this is a very cropped version of the history and background of it. But around 2018, we organized as NYC Gamers. And a huge part of our conceptualizing of the org was our name, because we didn't know if we wanted to keep it because so many of us don't identify as gay, but still want to feel included in the name and in the mission. So full transparency, I'm up at PAX East in Boston with my people. And it's like the end of the weekend. We're about to go to an after party and grab some drinks, and we smoking and we having a good time. And we're just like shooting, brainstorming back and forth, different things, right? And here comes Robert. Robert's the treasurer of NYC Gamers, my best friend, right? And he's like, NYC Gamers, where the Y in gamers means you belong.
Let's go.
That tagline. Love
it. At one point we're high and drinking and laughing, and then at another point we're crying, and we're like, "That's the one."
Ain't that the best? Like when really dope shit hits you when you're high, like that's because you're just like, I'm way too high to receive this information, but it's amazing.
High thoughts are at a scale of 1 to 0. Either they're great or they're just the absolute worst thing, and y'all landed on the great spectrum.
And you know, there's so many. Shout out to all of the gamer groups, because there's so many gamer groups, y'all. Like, throughout the United States, you got Las Vegas Gamers, Charlotte Gamers, Houston. I think Houston Gamers is still around, San Francisco. You even got folks in Canada, Vancouver Gamers, Toronto Gamers. I heard that there was a Mexico gamer group. You know, like, God bless it, London Gamers. There's so many folks around the world that carry on that energy, and they're either a nonprofit or they're just like a community group, right? Or a gathering. And there's millions of people around the world that identify as gamers with a Y. But NYC Gamers was the first ones to coin the Y in gamers means you belong, because we wanted to pioneer this ideology that you don't have to be a cisgender gay man to feel included and represented in the gamer community. Just like with the gay flag and with gay pride, it's inclusive of everyone who is within and surrounding the LGBTQIA plus spectrum.
I love that. And me and Trav often say that we always love when we just kind of have just like a natural synergy with our guests, because it makes for an amazing conversation, and also B, makes our jobs a lot easier because we don't have to like queue up like the next topic. So you had mentioned that, you know, being the first and pioneering something. So I think that's kind of like a perfect lead in to you have an announcement to make about another first, a pioneering event, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you know, I'm still taking it all in, but I'm really glad to announce that NYC Gamers this year, we're going to be hosting NYC Pride's first official Gamer with a Y Pride event, right? So Gamer Pride, right? So Gamer Pride is happening on Sunday, June 18th from 12 to 6 p.m. at Samsung 837 in Lower Manhattan, right? I think in the Meatpacking District. This is like near Chelsea. And then it's going to be followed by a VIP after party in Chelsea. But Gamer Pride is a free event open to everyone. We're going to be taking over 2 floors of the Samsung headquarters. You know, there's going to
humble stunt.
It's going to be like consoles, different consoles, and like play areas where you get to have fun playing games that you enjoy, Mario Kart, Smash Bros, etc., but also get to meet people in the community and get to make new friends and rekindle old ones, acknowledging that for a lot of us, we're still coming out of a pandemic, you know? So Gamer Pride is a love letter to our community to let them know that NYC Gamers survived the pandemic. It was through the pandemic that we got our registration as a nonprofit. We got our 501c3, where we're tax exempt, you know, and we were able to build a relationship with the NYC Pride organization, and they gave us a grant to be able to host this event, to make this event happen. And then we reached out to Samsung, and they gave us a grant. And, you know, like, it's still so much to process, right? Because y'all know how it is. It's not a lot. It's not a lot to work with, but what they give us keeps the lights on for another fiscal year. And a majority of it goes not only into this event, but to future events that we're doing with and for the community. So for folks who are interested, again, Gamer Pride is Sunday, June 18th from 12 to 6 at Samsung 837. For more info, check this out. Go to our website, gamers with a Y, gamers.nyc. See?
I love
NYC Gamers, gamers.nyc.
Look, Mikey, we need air horns, we need confetti sounds, we need cheers and applause, all that.
And I think the biggest thing that's just like so important is just that the community that you're building, and especially within the gaming industry, because, you know, as minorities growing up, you know, we playing online, it felt so toxic at times with just what people would say to you, not even knowing who you are. You're just like, hey, I'm sorry I'm whooping your ass in this game. Don't mean you gotta, you know, take personal attacks at me, but
just play better.
Right. Exactly. Like, hey, it's not my fault, you ass, but
right. Hop offline, get your levels up with some NPCs, right? And then go back.
Look, I can't play Overwatch without getting harassed, and that's on the constant, you know. So I feel you there. Not even a week or two ago, because I play a lot of Diablo 4 now with my friend group, right? But like a week or two ago, we were playing Overwatch. And I had gotten a play of the game with Junkrat, who's my main. And I think we were on like, for anyone who like knows the maps, right? We were on like Route 66, I think the map is called. I always forget the number. And I'm on top of a roof hiding. And they had just taken out my other 4 like players, right? My team. And I used my ult. And the tire goes from on top of the roof and lands right on top of them as soon as they had just gotten the payload to the objective. So I had a team kill, and it was a quintuple. And the way that they were all harassing me, at first it was playful banter because they're like, "Oh, F you, you know, you wallet, da da da." But then it comes out with the homophobic slurs, and a racial slur got thrown in there. And I feel a type of way because I'm like, first of all, how do you know? Secondly, like, really?
Why do you care?
Like, right? Like, really? That's how salty y'all got, right?
And what would your advice be to somebody who maybe isn't as confident as you are to be able to be like, hey, I just fucked you up in this game. You can keep throwing whatever insult you want at me. It doesn't matter. I still got that W. We can restart and I'm gonna still come out victorious. But how would you approach somebody who it actually is really affected them to the point where like they can't even enjoy the game anymore because they don't feel welcome and they feel as if they're just going to be attacked no matter what the outcome is, or maybe not even feel like they can play with these people, but it's for what has always they've tried to, like, the gaming community is always like, oh, we welcome all, come one, come all, when, like, that really hasn't been the case for when we've grown up. So in a long-winded way, what would be your advice to somebody who's like, I don't know if I want to go online anymore?
Right. I think when I think about the gaming community and when I think about gaming in general, I often relate it to a restaurant experience, right? Because it kind of lands the plane a little bit more with what we're talking about here, right? And I encourage game developers to treat their games like restaurants, right? And the content of the game is the menu. And you say that the game is for everyone, but you need to make sure that your menu is mindful enough of people with allergies, right? With folks who maybe need a Braille menu or a menu that's multilingual, right? And like, what about for folks who are vegetarian and have other dietary restrictions? Because that's what culture is, that's what identity, and that's what accessibility is, right? Neurodivergence, like you can go in depth in that metaphor, right? But then when it comes to people who experience online harassment and gaming related violence, right? It's like, first of all, hold the people who run the restaurant accountable, right? So, like, it's easy to and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. Like, please protect your energy, practice self-care. Right. If you need to take a step back from the game, do that. But don't be afraid to utilize the tools that are available to report people on what they're doing. Because even if the developers don't have the capacity to do something about it right then and there, it's still data that can be collected so that at the end of the fiscal year, they can see an increase in reports of online harassment. And maybe that'll have their stakeholders take it a little bit more seriously. And that's how people start getting delegated and hired to address issues like harassment in the chat and like the filters and what does that look like and all that, You could take that to Twitch. You could take that to social media. You can take that to any part of your life. Reporting is so important, right? And my last piece of like advice that I would share, especially for someone who's not as confident in being able to like clap back or say like take the L, right? Is game with friends. And if you don't have an immediate group of people to game with, find that community. Go online. I promise you that you're not alone. And there's so many groups like NYC Gamers, and there's gamer groups outside of just that subculture, right? Where you can link up with people and say, hey, I like playing Overwatch and I'm looking for a group of people to play with. Would anyone like to play? I'm looking for a clan to join for Diablo. I'm looking to start a new D&D campaign. Is anyone playing Magic this Friday, etc.? Play with people who come from intersecting backgrounds or lived experiences so that when the harassment happens, it's collective and you have a support system to be there with you.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important because, it's already, life is already tough, especially navigating through this world. And when you're supposed to go to a creative release and you can't even enjoy that, then you feel lost. And that's the one thing that, it's important to, to express and communicate. Like, we're not alone. There's somebody out, there's not just somebody, there's a whole community out there that is like, hey, you know what? Come in. Let's we enjoy the same shit we're just having fun with it. You know? So no, I think the NYC Gamers event is like almost an amalgamation of it all, where it's just like everybody come in and let's fucking ball.
Right.
Fucking ball.
In the past we tried doing different variations of Gamer Pride, right? Where we would do what we would call the Pride School Festival, PSF, right? And that was our annual event. It was virtual at one point. It was in person before the pandemic. But basically, it was an event space where we would have games for folks to play, but we'd also have special guests that would do interviews, and we would have panel discussions. And at one point, we tried producing an esports thing, right? And what we learned from all of these experiences is that there is so much to tackle and so much to take on. And for folks who aren't familiar with nonprofit work, ain't none of us paid for it. I'm the president and co-founder. It is literally illegal for me to get paid to do anything in service of NYC Gamers, right? Because I do this as a charity for a charitable organization, right? Now, I do independent work where I moonlight outside of my day job as a consultant, right? And I do work independently of that. And I use that consultation work as a way to fundraise for NYC gamers, right? I use my platform, like this podcast, for example. Thanks again for having me, you know?
Thank you for
But the
being
fact
here.
of the matter is, we
doing it.
can't keep the lights on, and this organization wouldn't exist if it wasn't for donors, if it wasn't for community members that bought our merch, that went to our events. Even if they broke and they literally just show up to play a game and leave, that's a number for us, because then we're able to take that to major organizations to say, listen, this is how many people we got on our Discord. This is how many people went to our events. And this is how many people stayed and they played this game and they did that and da-da-da-da. And with your support, this is where we can get to next. So that's my goal as president of NYC Gamers, you know? With $1 and a dream, I'm out here uplifting our community and trying my very best to center the most marginalized of our people, you know? On Juneteenth, I was invited by Gaming Magazine, Gaming with a Y magazine, to host a Juneteenth panel that I curate called I didn't even tell y'all about this. My panel's called
Tell us now.
It's called Stay Wind Woke, like the Wind Waker, right?
Hey.
So Stay Wind Woke, and it's about addressing representation in gaming communities. And I use this as an opportunity to reach out to folks who are Black, trans, non-binary, etc., and say, like, listen, I'm not here for you to tell, you know, cisgender, straight white people, you know, about the strife and the struggle of being a Black trans gamer and this. I'm here to celebrate us. And that's what Juneteenth to me is all about. So I'm really appreciative that Gaming Magazine is giving me this hour to invite folks from our community so that I could be like, hey, what games are you playing? And how's that benefiting your self-care and your community care and wellness? You know, what are you looking forward to? What are you up to so that we can uplift that? That to me is what NYC Gamers is all about. We want to be that hub for folks to feel like they do belong without feeling like a statistic, without feeling like they're being social climb, without feeling like they have to work twice as hard to get even half of an output or outcome out of it. And it's not easy, but I'm doing it.
Right, but
look,
that,
at a high
that
level.
work means right. Like there could, you know how corporate companies will throw a pride flag over their logo or turn their logo and it's all sometimes just to
Check a box.
And what you're doing is authentic and real, and that is gonna go. It's gonna save lives. Like people, like the big thing that is important that you continue to mention is self-care, because like you said, obviously, we can, we want to, be there for everyone that's going through the struggles and everything, but also too, it's important. Like, hey, what can we do to also lift you up? We can also support and be there for you, and we also want to lift you up. We also want to be able to let's bring in things into your life that are gonna get you to the person that you want to be, and also to just be yourself in this world. Like, and don't feel as if that you have to put on a facade because you just want to blend in to make it. Nah, fuck that.
Right.
Like you can be successful however you are. And I think that's just the uplifting, and like I always say, self-care is key. My mantra is hydrate and exfoliate, and so listen, you gotta take care of your mentals. You gotta take care of everything. Like it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, in Raffy, when you are amazingly spoken, and I just want to highlight you and your gifts and everything that you have going on, because like I will say, and this isn't even me like hyping you up for the podcast, that restaurant metaphor may be the best explanation of like just like bullying or hate or just like not being inclusive I've ever heard in my life. Like, that blew me away. Like that was amazing, because it's like that was such a palatable explanation. Because I feel like a big problem that we have, as minorities, is it's hard to communicate not being seen or not being like understood or feeling like you have a voice to somebody who's never had that problem. And like that example that you just did, which is now on the airways, which is going to live forever. I feel like anybody can get that. Everybody's ate at restaurants. Like whatever your creed or sexual orientation or what you identify, everybody's been to a restaurant. Everybody's gone to a place where it's just like, I would love to have that, but it got peanuts in it. Shit, can't eat it. Wish I could. And I love what you were saying. Oh, go ahead.
I don't waste too much of my time caring about white tears, and I say that real. I got some
right there with you.
But I got so much love and appreciation to aspiring allies who acknowledge that allyship is an action verb and not an identity. Right? Like the folks who are really out there, folks who are cisgender, folks who are male identified, folks who are able-bodied, who are older adults, folks who utilize their proximity to privilege or their privilege to be able to uplift underserved and marginalized folks and acknowledge that the equity and the inclusion of marginalized communities doesn't equal the erasure to your existence and your ability to eat, to access the restaurant. And I think that that's where a lot of that comes from. It comes from the fear of a loss of belonging, right? Because when you grow up feeling entitled to the table, and then suddenly the table goes from 10 chairs to just one that maybe you can put a reservation down for and all that, right? You have this fear of someday having to learn what you think starving is, right? And
damn,
suddenly
you just fucking me up
because I'm like, I was born hungry, and you over here trying to protect yourself from ever having to live.
I can't even fathom the thought of it.
Shit. Like, and I'm like, well, we wouldn't have this problem if y'all weren't so damn racist and problematic to begin with. So how about instead of internalizing that, why don't you redirect that towards restaurant owners, towards game developers and game designers and folks who are the key holders and the gatekeepers, and be like, hey, how are you building these things to make sure that I and these communities are being thought of and intended from the jump, from the get-go, from the foundation, so that we don't have to do what y'all think is political, PC and cultural. What do they call it? Culture wars or whatever,
Oh, right. and they don't realize either that, listen, life is gonna be better if you let us in. Some of the most creative,
we gonna
best
get
minds,
in regardless.
and whether you
hook
like
by
it or
crook,
not,
baby,
we gonna be here. And
I'd be scared too if a majority of the best Mortal Kombat players in the world got melanin. Correlation versus causation. I don't know what to tell you.
Mortal Kombat Black, baby, you about to take over. But I wanted to go back, Raffy, with something that you had just said about being an ally, being an action word, as opposed to just like a way to check a box, like me and Trav were saying, because we've talked
black boxes,
right? Like I posted 4 black squares after George Floyd died. Like, I was 4 times as progressive, like shit like that. But me and Trav have talked about before in a previous podcast that we've done together. Homosexuality. I'm sorry, not homosexuality. Being like what's the word I'm looking for? I just had a whole brain blank.
But say it. Say it on
I just lost it. No, I literally just lost the word.
It's all good.
I'm sorry. I got it back. We've talked about being homophobic, like in the black community or just in minorities, like how like it just runs so rampant. Like it's just really just like a disease. Like it's really bad. And we've talked about as black men who identify as straight, like we just don't understand other minorities who are just like so put off by someone's sexual orientation. It's just like, this doesn't affect you at all. Like it literally doesn't mess up your money. It don't mess up your life. Like we just don't understand it. And some of my closest friends are members of the LGBTQ community and whatnot. So it's just like, I don't get it. That's not my story. We don't perpetuate it. And we love having you here, being part of that community. And I guess my question, what I want to ask, being someone who identifies as straight, wanting to put, my support into action and not just words, in terms of bringing it back to like gaming, I would imagine like the gamers and stuff, like I'm sure that you guys have conversations with, your village about, like gaming etiquette and like, things that you shouldn't do or shouldn't say or shouldn't engage with, like while you're, in that online headspace. Would you feel as someone who has boots on the ground that I'm going to bunny quote for the people who aren't going to be watching this visually. Would you feel that it's more powerful for like the straight gamers to be the ones who are like vocally saying like, hey, that's not okay, and like trying to push that out to more people, or members in the LGBTQ community are saying like, yo, like this isn't how we game. Like it's a video game that we all love. Why can't that be the commonality versus like who I love outside this game? So, or maybe if it's a team effort. But do you feel like, you know, you guys with the gamers being able to like have like these, you know, forums and panels and stuff like expressing game etiquette, is that the thing that's needed more right now in 2023? Or like I said, the antagonizers on the other side of it speaking up, is that something that you think is more valuable today?
I love questions like this because this is where I feel like y'all are dropping me on the Huey Freeman's like soapbox, right?
Well, that's why we here, baby.
Talk, right? Like, I'm listening to your question and I'm thinking about Kimberly Crenshaw, who's the person who coined the term intersectionality, right? Where she talks to us about the importance of acknowledging the multitudes of a person's lived experience and acknowledging that someone's identity or lived experience isn't monolithic, right? And then you could like read up on your Audre Lorde, right? And she was talking about that. She was like, I, as a Black woman, can't, you know, turn my head or be silent when the lesbian community is protesting something and they're looking for justice because I am a Black lesbian woman, right? So any lesbian issues are my issues. They are inherently Black issues because I am a Black lesbian. And any women's rights issues are my issues, and they are Black issues and lesbian issues because I am a Black lesbian woman. And like talking about that, I take all that I've learned from our ancestors and from our revolutionaries, spoonful of honey, grain of salt, because not all of them were perfect. It happens, right? But I take what I've learned and I apply that into my truth and in my journey and into what we teach at NYC Gamers, right? How we're having these conversations. So when I think about gaming, I tell folks, I'm like, listen, it's important for you as an aspiring ally to ask yourself, when you are the one when you're the one that's experiencing harassment, or maybe you're someone who's playing against someone who's cheating or sabotaging your game, right? You want justice, right? Mm-hmm. And in order for you to get justice, sometimes you need a group of people to help you in reporting this person or holding them accountable. It's not just you by yourself. And expecting the community that's impacted most by the violence to be out there by themselves fighting for equity and justice, that's wild, because you're expecting us to be survivors of violence and carry the emotional labor of overcoming it. Damn. And I could talk about this forever. This is where you get that Black heroism complex, and that's why you got people built like Miranda Bailey on Grey's Anatomy carrying that show for 18 seasons, you know? Like, when does it stop? When does it stop, right? Like, it's wild. I mean, Piccolo, listen. You know, like, I could talk about this shit for eons, but we are tired. You know, I find it so ironic when white people call Black folk lazy, because I'm like, we're not lazy, we are exhausted, you know, and y'all are lazy because we're waiting for y'all to do the work to finish what y'all started. So how are people who are in positions, and I'm not even going to say that everyone is privileged. I'm going to say check your proximity to privilege, no matter where you are in the matrix of oppression. Check your proximity to it and ask yourself, what can I do to be a participant in anti-oppression work, even at the risk of my own comfort? Because that fragility you feel, that discomfort you feel, it's temporary, it's fleeting. Imagine what it feels like for someone who's at the bottom of the barrel, you know? And that's kind of like my philosophy with all of that, especially when it comes to gaming, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're Black, white, Asian, straight, gay, trans, etc. It does not matter, because the one thing that connects all of us as humans across cultures, across years, decades, eons, right, is that we all play. Whether you're playing hand games on the playground, whether you're playing online on Twitch, whether you're playing with your grandkids, or you playing games, you playing politics, you playing this, you playing that, we all play. It is a form of communication. It is a language that is ever evolving. You know, it's as important to the human identity as science and mathematics and the other universal languages. So when folks want to be a disruption to that, I feel sorry for them. And I'm like, listen, you're going to have to either evolve with the rest of us or acknowledge that you are literally allying with the former side of human history, with the axis of power.
And I always say too, to build off of what you're saying, is like, I always say there's an art and there's a craft of listening and shutting up. Like, I'm never going to tell you, Raffy, if you're telling me about an experience that you went through that I've never went through myself, like, well, I don't think you should feel that way. Who am I to say that? Like, who, like, if anything, like, well,
PD pop, motherfucker.
Right. If even though I've never experienced that, I'm here to listen and for you to let me know, like, what can we do to make sure that, you know, if I come across this in the future, this isn't going to happen. But, and to what you were saying as well, is like, to the root of it all is that we all have the common interest of playing. And so it, like, first off, for most of the time when we're playing, I can't even see who's on the other side of the screen because we're just playing our digital characters. So what does it matter then who is actually controlling that character? Like, if that person if it's a co-op and y'all are on a team and that person is getting all the kills and you're just sitting back, then all right, then we got the win. So what does everything else matter? It doesn't. Like, and if you both are vibing and y'all have great chemistry, then y'all have great chemistry. Like, it should just be there. But some people just they like you said, are fragile, and people fear not even just change. This is just the world. This is reality. This is us. And it's important that you know, I always say too that there are things in life that, like, bring people together despite their differences, and like one is usually sports. And when people get angry with each other about sports, it's because they're arguing about strangers that they're never going to even ever meet in their life. But gaming also, you know, even though in the past it's been like, I mean, we're still getting it to this day, but gaming is also something where it's like, hey, you know what? Yo, let's go online. Let's play. Like, and we have to continue to spread that message, because there's still those that come in with their toxic feelings and their fragility, and it's just kind of like, well, you know, this is not for you. And as soon, hopefully, you are going to be the minority in this, because all of us are not going to stand for that.
Right. Yeah. Can I just say real quick?
Okay.
Can I just say real quick? You know, I think that it's, and I don't say this to you directly, right? Because I hold myself accountable to it too, right? I think that it's almost dismissive when we have these conversations and center it around aspects of gaming where we don't even see the people who are playing with us, right? Because I feel like even though the harassment and the violence still happens, I feel like that kind of gives that, like, well, I don't see color energy that we've internalized because of our shit, right? And I check myself on that on the constant, because I think about, like, all right, well, how do we address it when it's something that's so obvious that there's no looking back, right? So even in a game, like, I say Overwatch a lot because I play it often, right? So, like, even with Overwatch, their new campaign for June is that they gave everybody for free player icons with the pride flag, and you got banners with the pride flag and all of that, right? And that's wonderful. But now this is what I think about. All right, does that mean that the moment that I put the non-binary flag as my player icon and the trans flag as my banner, does that mean that other people are able to see that and they could then use that to target me and to either spam me and harass me in the game, where I'm playing a character that's constantly being killed and they're literally sidewinding around my teammates because they're only targeting me, right? Is it because of that? Or am I being gaslit, or what's going on, right?
Right.
And it happens in other games. In Dead by Daylight, they announced a gay character. And at first, everybody was talking about representation matters, and that's so great. We have an openly gay character. And I'm over here like, I am not going to spend what little free time I have paying for a game to hate crime me, because the moment that I play as an openly gay character
and they murder me,
right. And suddenly I'm their obsession, whether or not I'm mechanically their obsession or not. And then, you'll have people saying, oh, Raffy, you're overreacting. And I'm like, nigga, how many times have I played DBD and I refuse to play Claudette because they keep coming after the black woman? And no, it's not because she's a healer. It's because she's a black woman.
Right.
Like we need to start thinking like the people who are on the other side of this. There are a lot of hateful people who are literally taking the time out of their day to cause harm to other people so that we don't feel safe in these gaming spaces, And it's important to address that shit, that even at the risk of increasing diversity and representation and all that, we got to think, how are we making these spaces more more intentionally safe for folks who are at risk the moment that our assumed equality and representation and all that is to kind of like turn the lights on, to kind of like say like, hey, we're diverse because we're giving you a way to kind of come out the virtual closet, if that makes sense.
Mortals, listen up. It's your god of destruction, Beerus here. Subscribe and follow the Dragon Ball for Life podcast, or else you shall be erased from existence. Hakai.
I love
what
that.
I'm trying to say?
No, I love that.
And that's important that you say that, because I need, thinking about that. And because you're right, because there's a lot of hateful people out there. They're going to see that and be like, oh, wait, they're going to talk in their own groups. Let's go for that. And that's still, even though it's a quote unquote video game, you're still targeting somebody.
Yeah.
You're still hurting their experience playing the game, because you're playing it a different way because you see the Abby. And you're not playing it in a way that this is just my opponent. No. I'm targeting this specific player on the team. And so that's a very good point.
No, definitely.
Even when you're playing a game like Diablo 4, where it's MMORPG, right? I wonder if in the first few weeks we're gonna start hearing what we hear in a bunch of other games where there's character creation. And shout out to the team behind character creation, because I love the hair textures, I love the options, right? Not the best, not the most diverse, but I like it. We're getting somewhere with it.
Right.
And I wonder how many folks are going to have issues playing PvP or getting into clans because they're playing a larger bodied person like a druid, or they're playing a dark skinned person with this kind of hair texture or whatever, because we like to think that, these are characters, they aren't experiencing things that happen to us in real life, when in fact it's like, yeah, they are. And we don't have enough time to talk about it, but there is such thing as virtual blackface, and I can't stress how often that happens on social media as much as in video games.
Big facts. And I'm like super duper loving this conversation, by the way, because it's like we had kind of touched on at the beginning of the conversation, like your origin story, Raffy, like it mirrors me and Travs in terms of, kindred spirits. And what you just said kind of perfectly cues up a question that I was looking to ask, because, me and Trav have had this conversation. We often reference the Rooney Rule in terms of sports, in terms of, that sports teams have to interview a black candidate for certain positions in the front office. And, we talk about, inclusivity and representation. And I'm loving what you had just said about, now that I'm using the pride banner, is that like a light shine on me, like a negative light? And you kind of touched on, but I kind of want to stick with that. Are there times, or what is your take on when cinema or video games do include a gay or queer character? Do you get that sense of we got one, or is it oh, you're pandering to me? And it's just because I say all the time, I hate when shows make a character gay just to say they made a character gay. It doesn't affect the character's arc or trajectory or development as a character. It's just oh, this is a character. they have a love interest. Like they'll like have that one line where they like mention like, yeah, you know, I went on a date with a guy the other day, and that's like the only mention of that person being gay and like the whole thing. And it's just like, as minorities, I'm constantly at odds with myself. Like, do I take the win because we get so few and far in between, or do I call bullshit? Because it's like, I know some fuck shit when I see it. And I just wonder like what your take on that is.
So I'm gonna start by saying this, okay? A huge segue, but hear me out. I'm
No, we here.
neurodivergent,
Look,
but
we are the
this is
king
what I
of
work,
tangents here.
Right? No, I'm a tangent.
Look,
like,
you
legend
are
over
in
here,
the
right?
right place.
So, hear me, so I deviate and I side quest, but I get back to the main road. I
I
promise.
love it.
Right?
That's
Okay.
video games, baby. That's
I always
video
like
games.
going on the side quest to level up.
Right.
Hell
That's
yeah.
ADHD 101. Go for all the side quests. So,
Let's get
so you know, I saw the trailer to The Color Purple recently, right? And I hadn't read the books since high school, right? And I had read it several times in my life, but high school, like junior year, was the last time I picked up the book. And then I've seen the original film and all that, right? So I decided, you know, let me get back into the book. And I downloaded the audiobook because I ain't got time right now. I be working and shit, right?
Book
And I'm
busy.
listening to it,
Right.
and I'm quote unquote reading the book through a new lens, through a 32-year-old Raffy lens, and I'm picking up on stuff that I didn't catch when I was younger, right? And I'm on forums and Reddit and Twitch and Twitter and like all these things, right? And I'm talking to other folks about it, and a friend of mine is like, yeah, it's so unfortunate that Alice Walker, the author of the book, was so problematic. And I was like, well, whoa, what the fuck do you mean Alice? And they're like, no, she was like iconic for being transphobic. She's a TERF. And she was like defending J.K. Rowling. And I'm like, you know, and like at first it took me a moment, and I'm like, I'm honestly not fucking surprised. But the reason why I bring this up is because this is what I mean when I talk about the multitudes, right? And you got to take everything with a spoonful of honey and a grain of salt. You can appreciate someone for the impact that they've had on your self-care and sustainability, on your representation, on your things, while still holding them accountable for being shitty. And if you want proof of that, let's start within, because I could talk about my history with my parents, with my siblings, with my uncles, with my aunties. I could hold them accountable and say, just because I love you doesn't mean I can't stand you. You know, and just because I love you doesn't mean I can't hold you accountable, right? So I have the same mentality when I'm thinking about, you know, representation in the media and gaming. For example, Voldemort, right? No, not Voldemort, Dumbledore.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after the release
Fantastic
of
Beasts.
the original books
Yes, right.
that J.K. Rowling was like, oh, by the way, Dumbledore's gay. And yet we had no context. There was no expression of it. And even in the newer movies, it was like...
It's hinted at.
It was poor. It was a poor representation of it, and it did nothing for the character. The character could have been asexual, and it literally would have done nothing for the story because it's not giving depth to the character and their growth and development and their relationships, etc. Right? That to me is performative.
If anything, it's funny you say that because Dumbledore reads to me as asexual. Like, I don't like it, that's how he reads to me in the movies and in the books.
Thank you for saying that, because that was my first interpretation of Dumbledore. But I digress, all right? Then let's look at Miles Morales. Let's look at the Spider-Verse movies, right? I don't want to spoil anything for folks who haven't watched the second
I just saw
movie,
it,
right?
so but Trav ain't seen
See it tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Ravi.
So good.
I'm not going to spoil anything, I promise. But I'll say this. In the past week that the movie's been out, on Twitter, all I've been seeing on my feed is folks who are speculating that Spider-Woman, Gwen Stacy,
Gwen.
Spider-Gwen, that she's trans, right? And at first it comes off as fan casting, right? Like headcanon kind of stuff. But then they start doing film theory, right? Like MatPat, like game theory, film theory kind of stuff. And they start looking at some of the quotes that come out of the first movie and the second one, and some of the stuff that you see in the backstory and the lighting and the intention behind some animation. And it puts you in a place where you're like, you know, whether or not she's trans, right, is less important than the impact that the possibility has on the community. And that's where I'm like, damn, I hope that they I hope they make it canonical. I think it would be so beautiful to see this character come out as trans and see what that relationship does with Miles and with other folks, and how do we play that out, right? Because you're already seeing an intention and you're already seeing a connection within the community that works, where it does give depth and it gives more breath to this character. That to me doesn't feel performative. That to me feels authentic as hell, you know? So that's what I want to see more of.
Because it's like, it's all about like good storytelling, you know? Like if you have a great story, you can still figure out ways that it works for your characters. And like, you know, whenever we see superhero movies that or other shows in general where they're like, oh, we're just gonna recast with minorities playing like the same roles, or it's like, well, why can't we just create our own story that makes sense instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, but just place people that look like this, that identify us in the same storyline? Like that doesn't, like sometimes it just doesn't, from a fan standpoint, make sense. Well,
I want to like lovingly argue that too, because I feel like so many of these superheroes that we grew up loving, we have to learn to also check our attachment style to them, right? Because a lot of us are online defending something that's been around before our time, and like we're not holding space for the next generation of kids that are looking up to them, right? So like I grew up loving Peter Parker, and my Peter Parker was white, and like my Spider-Man was white. I didn't have the option of a black Spider-Man, right? But not only do I now have the option of a black Spider-Man, but he's black and Puerto Rican. I'm like, if I had that body, that was me, baby. What the fuck? Like, now I feel like he's in my neighborhood and not just in fucking Forest Hills or some bullshit in Queens, right? Like, I feel like that's my friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I love that. And I see my nephew in that. And that's where I feel like representation is important. And yeah, I think it's totally okay for certain superheroes and fictional characters to be recasted with other races and ethnicities and sexualities and genders. Have at you. But what is the context behind it? Give me the storytelling, right? Someone like Superman, that works. You can make Superman anything you want because his backstory does not change regardless of what Kryptonians look like.
Right,
you can make Krypton
he's
look
not
like
even
Tokyo,
human.
Japan, and then a baby lands in Smallville and Superman is Asian, and boom, it has nothing to do, right? But then are you going to acknowledge in this Asian variant Superman the fact that Asian-related hate violence exists, and Superman is existing in a world where not only is he experiencing xenophobia, but he's also experiencing anti-Asian hate violence because you are putting him in a fictional world where that exists. This is the depth that I need. I think that Marvel did a really good job of that with Captain America and the passing of the baton to
Sam.
To Sam, right? Sam. They did an excellent job of that. I still feel like there's room for growth, and I'm exhausted, you know? But but I think they did a pretty good job with what they had to work with, you know, within that military dynamic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
absolutely.
And look, lovingly argue.
I love that's my new favorite saying.
Because that's like a really good point, because I take a step back and think about that, because you're right. Like, we have that attachment because that's what like we grew up on. But as you know, once I get to the point when I have kids and that's their superhero, I'm probably gonna be like, shit, like. Right, like that's dope. Like, why did I have like that sort of like super figure to look up to? Because I was just thinking about like Matt and I always joke about how like the lack of black characters in Dragon Ball Z, and I'm just like taken aback how that was like my gateway anime, and I'm just thinking like if there was like a black Super Saiyan or something like that was like something that I'm like, oh, You talk about you bought
That's my
$600
favorite.
worth of,
That's my favorite.
of Harry Potter gear. I would, like that.
Yeah.
I'd be buying stuff for myself more than my kids. But
Even if he was a villain, even if he lost,
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even if he could have been Krillin, he could have been any of them, and he would have been our favorite because that would have been our entire personality because of how lacking black representation is, right?
Yes.
Hell yeah. And you kind of said something that kind of made a question kind of pop into my head. Like if we would all like close our eyes and like be in a perfect world where inclusion is just, that's the norm. Like that's just what it is. Like we don't have any outliers. We don't have any bigotry or hate or exclusion. Like it's just basic human decency, which is kind of like, to my core, the only thing that really matters. Like just basic human decency. There's just some shit that you just don't do to people, whether you like them or not. There's just some things you just don't do or don't say. Does that version of like perfect inclusion, because I love the reference that you made about, Gwen Stacy, like, because I know exactly what scenes you're talking about, like with her pastel colors in the background and, like conflicting identity crisis and whatnot. Would the perfect version look like that, where it's like, hey, there are subtle undertones that, like you were saying, the idea that she could be trans is stronger because it's like, it's hope. Like and that's what everybody wants. Like it's hope, something that I could hold on to. Like sometimes the mystery is better than the answer. Like sometimes the speculation, the journey is better than, the destination. Would perfect inclusion be a world where, whether it's media or gaming, is that the differences don't matter anymore because we're all just together? Or it's like, oh, I see your differences and that's okay. So it's just like, just to use, what we're talking about, like queer gamers and stuff. It's like, oh, like I see you're queer, doesn't matter. Or I see you're queer and I accept it. Like what are we striving for? Like what's the end game?
My end game is I see your differences and I love that for us.
Ooh.
Because my theory is, right?
He made it.
Because think about it.
He made the remix a hotter song.
I love that. Y'all inspire it, But like that's my philosophy in life, because I have this wild theory. This is where we start. Where's my kufi? Like, where's my hat? Let me
about to get your Job on.
Like, my philosophy, my grand wild ideology is that if we lived in a world where there was the decolonization and destabilization of white supremacy and colonialism, right? Which once you get rid of that, you get rid of all of the sub-products and parodies of that. That means no more sexism, no more ableism, no more transphobia, homophobia, all of that, right? Once you destabilize and decolonize all of that, what's left is a celebration of differences. And then the people who finally relinquished their attachment to the illusion of whiteness, they finally are liberated from their own shackles, and they are able to do something that will only promote further diversity. They'll be able to find their true selves. They'll be able to reconnect with their ancestors and their cultures, and they'll be able to bring something new to the new table, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to know what can a white person bring to the table once they destabilize whiteness, and what's left is the values that connects with the spectrum of humanity and who we are without the need for power and oppression. Ain't that a bitch? Like that's what I'm waiting for, and that's what I want, because we're seeing it now. How many white kids go to my nephew's birthday party, sees Miles Morales, and it's like, that's Spider-Man, and that's my favorite Spider-Man, and that's not disrupting their privilege in any way, shape, or form. That's still a little white kid, and their daddy's still white, and they're still going to grow up in a world that favors them, even if they're ignorant of it at this time at the age of 8. But they're in a generation where they're exposed to it at an earlier age, so it becomes normalized. And there's room for healthier conversations around pronouns and gender and all these beautiful things that has a person who is growing up in this world say, what is it about me that needs to come out of this conformist box? What is it about me that I can celebrate without feeling like I'm in this attachment to these systems of oppression that cause harm to the people that I grew up celebrating and identifying with,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And I think too, like thinking about that as well is normalizing it early, and also forcing the parents to have to, if the story, like you said, has depth and is able to bring in these different themes and that can expose these kids early, but they're like, I still love Spider-Man, and it'll allow them to, like, all right, look, you thought you were going to have this conversation about these topics until they were in high school or here, or maybe like if they were getting bullied about it. No. They love this character the same way that you loved that same character who might have looked a different way. But you are now, this is the new generation. And I think too, like it'll help then have these conversations brought up at a time where, because kids, they're like, your mind is really like molding, and you really soak in information that, especially from people that you love and respect at an early age. And I think that finding creative ways to really like, filter in all these different things like early, I think that's great, because I think that it then it encourages the younger generation to be themselves at an earlier age. Like, don't feel as if, like, I always I always like laugh at people that get mad at D Wade for how he's parented his children, and I'm like, I love it. I love the way that he's embraced Zaya. Like, I think I think more parents should look at that and be like, hey, because like, well, no, they're too young to know what they're. How do you know? Like, they're trying to tell you. They're trying, like, hey, like, these are not my interests. Like, in the same way that if my son were to come out to me and say, hey, Dad, I like basketball, it wouldn't be a problem for you to say,
You like football.
I'm going to buy him a basketball, buy him a hoop, take him to an NBA game. So, like, if they, they come up with interest and saying, like, oh, I might be into, you're going to, this is what my kid is into, and I love my kid. So let's embrace it. So I think, I think that this just, and this is coming from someone who obviously doesn't have kids yet, but Matt has kids. Yeah. You have nephews that you said that are this is their Spider-Man, and it's just just opening my eyes, and just how it's important to really approach these conversations, but also to just encourage that sort of creativity, and also just, hey, look, all superheroes, anyone, they can be anybody.
Well, Maddie said it, right? Like, and this is exactly how I would probably treat my kids when I have kids someday, right? If I had a kid that came out to me as trans, bi, gay, whatever, I feel like the first question I want to ask them is, how are we going to connect this to your backstory and to your character development, right? Like, I want to know, if I'm a parent or guardian and someone that is a part of your story, I want to make sure that I'm not just a side character or a character that's being like, I want to be a part of your story, because you're the main character of your story, right? And if this is a part of your truth, if this is a part of your character development and all that, I want to celebrate that. I want to make sure that that's not just a footnote on Spark Notes. I want to make sure that your multitudes are celebrated, and that I'm a witness to that, and I'm a participant in that in whatever ways you need or you ask for.
1000%. And I want to. Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, and just real quick, I have these conversations a lot when it comes to talking about, like, when I'm talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm talking about, like, social justice being more intersectional and like all the things, right? I'm like, listen, when we see LGBTQ plus, movements and justice happening, when we see, like the uprising of like pro-Asian immigration equality, the like all these beautiful movements that are happening around the world, right? I want us as a Black people to celebrate that and uplift that and acknowledge that the destabilization and decolonization of gender and ethnicity and colorism and ableism, these are literally the steps to reversing and undoing white supremacy in all its power, right? Because all of these different systems of oppression, they're all mapped out by our oppression. Like, it was white supremacy that pioneered all of that. Everything else is a parody of it. So once we as a Black community are accepting and supportive of trans people and disabled people and all these people, right, then we are unifying in a way that's more equitable and destabilizes the power from white supremacy. This is RPG 101, yo.
I'm loving it. And Trav, both you and Raffy just kind of touched on something, and I kind of want to like put like a parental spin on it. But Raffy, you just said something that like was super profound to me. You know, like when you say if you take away, or you want to be in a world where like you want to see what would happen if you take away like the systemic like downtrodden that happens to our people. Like if you take that away from, you know, people of the fairer complexion, for lack of a better term, the white people, if you take that away, like what do you got? Like what do they have? And to steal a move from you and take a side quest, I've had conversations like I always find it very interesting with people who try to curate their own trauma, because they're friends with people who have been through shit and they've never been through shit, and they don't feel like they can contribute to the friend group. Like, dang, like I have a friend who lost a parent young, or I have a friend who was, you know, abused as a child, or I have a friend who was homeless, or, you know, doesn't come from, you know, like wealth. And here I am, not even necessarily wealthy, but just like better off. So they don't feel like they have something to contribute. Like they're not worldly enough to be able to say, like, have these types of conversations, because they don't have that trauma. So they start like manufacturing their pain, and they might like put themselves in bad situations. So now I have a story to tell. So to connect it to what you just said, Raffy, I find that interesting, and also connect to what you just said, Trav. I find it really interesting and kind of very thought provoking. If you do remove all that white supremacy from white people, what are you then offering to your children? What are you then teaching? Like, what are you then putting out into the world? Because like you don't have that, you know, pedestal to stand on. Like what now you have to lean on like your value as a person, like your morals, your compass. Like, how am I gonna like make the world a better place, or leave the shit better than what I left it? And I think that's such a crazy concept of y'all saying, like, you know, once that's gone, once like all the shackles, the metaphorical, physical, spiritual, emotional, that have been taken away, like what are those interactions going to be like now? Because like now you can't lean on the fact that you like had like a leg up on me, and not even necessarily on like a racist standpoint, but like even if you just have the friends who just ain't been through the shit that you've been through, it's like it's not really like that shared life experience. But like you were saying, Trav, you know, having white kids look at Miles Morales and say like, oh, that's my Spider-Man. Like, even though it's not a a white Spider-Man, maybe they know, maybe for the next generation, Peter Parker, that's they Obi-Wan. That's they cool mentor. That's not they Luke. Like, that's like, oh yeah, Peter Parker, yeah, he helped Miles. Like, he wasn't like the focal point. So yeah, I think that's such a crazy I want to see that world now too. Like,
I love that metaphor, because I feel sorry for kids that gotta grow up with Rey and like this next generation of Star Wars. I'm like, oh,
they're gonna look. I'm holding out hope that they're gonna do right by her with her solo movie. And
I hope so too.
It's not even necessarily because like I think I really just like Daisy Ridley. I don't think I like Rey. So I want her to win.
Right.
So it's like they gotta do better. And Finn has to come back. They owe him one.
Let's talk about someone who is owed their just desserts. They are owed their flowers. They're owed all the things, right?
Facto. And John Boyega, he's the man, yo. Like, cause he took him getting shafted out of those sequel movies like in stride. Like, he didn't bash the movie. They need to be careful with him,
because if they don't do him right, he's going to Marvel. There's no way
look,
that he will match him up, especially with everything going on with the Kang controversy.
I can see him taking Jonathan Major's spot.
He's not the one that replaces that, because apparently he's available. So
look, bring him in. But that would be great. But man, what a conversation! what a conversation! All right, before we start to like kind of get into like more like anime stuff, because me and Trav obviously want to pick your brain on just like your nerddom and everything, just like everything that we've talked about. And again, we do these things to give flowers to people who deserve it and why they can receive them. Like, obviously, to help use our platform to, you know, uplift and inspire and, you know, get your voice heard by people who might not have heard it otherwise. But a question that I want to ask you, because like I wholeheartedly would put all my money on you. I like the way you talk, your knowledge on things, like your take on everything. I can tell that you're gonna make like major changes when it comes to like this type of representation in this space that hasn't been inclusive for people that look like us ever. Have you taken the time to sit down with yourself and allow that to sink in? That like things that you're doing right now is going to be shit that's talked about generations from now. Like, hey, if it wasn't for Raffy and the NYC Gaymers, I wouldn't be able to hop online and not even think about bigotry. I don't even know what that word means because it's never been a thing. And it's because of like the foundation that you're laying. Like, have you yet, or has that thought crossed your mind that like, I'm working on something right now that is going to like echo through eternity, to quote Gladiator. Don't know why that movie just popped in my head, but it's like, because me and Trav have talked about this, like that's why we started this podcast. Like, we want to be the representation that we didn't have. Like, we're trying to, you know, facilitate not even a community, because it's like, I feel like that's putting ourselves in a box. Like, oh, I want to make a community. Like, no, like I want to make this the norm. Like what we're doing, like the conversation that the three of us are having right now. Like, I don't want this to be the exception. I don't want this to be, you know, the tip of the spear. Like, I want this to be the whole fucking weapon. Like this should be what it was. So it's like, do you and like your team, like, do y'all sit and be like, yo, like, world changing shit is being discussed at this table right now? Like, do you feel that in your soul? Because I feel it for you, man. I feel it for you.
You know, today was a really heavy day for me because I'm literally a week and a half away from Gamer Pride, and this is something that we've been planning for half a year now, even longer, right? Because it's a reoccurring thing. This is our first year that it's an official Pride event. We wanted to go big. We wanted to do all these things. And we only really had a month to kind of land the plane on everything because we're broke. We can't do shit without funding. So we were promised, you know, sponsorships, and then we got to wait for them to open their purse, right? So like, it's a lot of waiting, and it's a lot of waiting. So, you know, I think about it when you ask this question because sometimes I feel like thinking about that for me is a privilege that I don't have right now because I'm so in it and I'm exhausted. And I'm, you know, like I'm a product of the ballroom scene. I am a product of the community, of the queer community in New York City and NYC nightlife. I know what it is to feel to be unhoused. I know what it is to navigate sex work. I know what it is to battle with substance use. And I've been through my demons and my trials and tribulations, you know, to get to where I'm at today. I busted my ass to get to where I'm at today. And I'm only 32. It's only the beginning for me, right? And NYC Gaymers for me is what I want to be my legacy. It's what I want to be remembered by, right? And I want it to be this gift to the community so that the next generation has it a little bit easier, just a little bit easier, and feels just more belonging, right? They didn't have to fight so hard to find what I was lacking, what I needed, and what I was looking for. But it's hard for me to sit on that when I'm over here trying to do great things, and I'll have conversations with y'all, and right off the bat, y'all are like, yo, that sounds important. Let's get that happening. And then you got people who are multi-millionaires who hear the same thing, and it takes 3 weeks for them to bust a $5,000 check. You know? And I'm like, damn. You know, and y'all can give me all the excuses you want about logistics, and you have to, you know, get the yeses and nos from different channels and da-da-da-da. That's fine for you. But the fact of the matter is, you're investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And unfortunately for you, oppression doesn't take time off. You know? So while y'all are taking y'all sweet time to follow through on your commitment to uplift marginalized communities through NYC Gaymers, who's committed to that through our mission, we still have community members that don't even know that Gamer Pride is happening, right? Because we don't even have the funding to buy palm cards to distribute at Pride events. You know what I mean? And like, it goes to show you how fucked up the system is. And I'm not saying this to be ungrateful. I'm not using this as an opportunity to like vent and go off. I'm naming the truth and the reality of what it is. You know, at one point I tried doing a podcast. I did one episode and I stopped. Because as soon as I finished that episode and I published it, I realized, I was like, I don't think I have the mental health capacity to try to be Mr. Beast and Matt Pat and, you know, like all of these like media giants. I don't have the mental health capacity for Twitch. I can't stream for the life of me, you know? And for those who do,
we know that struggle.
Right. And for those who do, don't stop. If this is your ministry and this is what you're made to do, if this is what y'all are doing, don't stop. And let me know how I can amplify that through my ministry. And that's how we do it collectively, right? I don't have to be the one doing it. I can uplift those who are meant to do it. Right now, where I'm at in my life, I feel like I'm so knee deep in the trenches that I just can't see what's the horizon. And I want to get there. I'll let y'all know when that time arrives, you know?
So I'm so happy. I'm so happy you said that, because honestly, I get that vibe from you. And me and Trav, you know, we just threw off our first cosplay party. It was like the first of its kind in Philly, and it exceeded our expectations. Went a lot better than what we had thought, and it got picked up for another one that we're doing close to Halloween and everything. But the reason why I wanted to ask you that question was because a issue that me and Trav suffer from, and it was told to us that whole night during the party, is like, you know, like you just said, like for me and Trav, like this is what we want to do to leave our mark on the world, like plant that seed for the tree that we won't see. And then also, this is what we want to do to quit our 9-to-5 jobs. So it's like we've put the majority, if not most of our eggs into this basket. But because me and Trav are so militant when it comes to, you know, like execution, Trav way more on the organizational side, me more on like the scorched earth side. But we're so militant when it comes to, you know, like making sure that people know that this isn't just a hobby. Like, no, like we're really, we here, like we do this in real life, that we don't necessarily always appreciate our wins. Like when we pulled off that event, me and Trav were already like, all right, next
we had an interview the next day.
Yeah, no, we had an interview like the very next day.
Next morning.
And then a lot of our friends and family were like coming up to us and like saying like, hey, you guys did it. Like, don't forget to take a moment to like soak it in. So, but it took them to say, and I said it because like immediately when we did our pre-call interview, even now, I feel like the three of us are very similar in like just headspace and work ethic and just like, all right, what's next? That's done. Check. Head down, through the wall. Let's get this shit done. Cause like we see what the end game is, and everything that just gets to that is just part of the journey. So, but sometimes those markers are huge, like really big things that we can't always appreciate. And it sometimes takes outside parties to let us know that we're dope as fuck. So Raffy, if you don't ever sit down and tell yourself, let us tell you, you are dope as fuck.
Dope as fuck.
Like, you are fucking shit up right now. Keep going.
Look, I'll say this. No matter how y'all feel in proximity to y'all journeys and everything, y'all got to interview someone who is the co-founder and, you know, hopefully someday executive director, but currently board president of a 501c3 nonprofit.
Remove the hopefully.
You know what I mean?
Nah, that's happening.
Like,
that's happening.
Like, even if it's still small things, I'm like, we need to celebrate us and we need to celebrate each other. And I try to celebrate me. I'm proud of how far we've gotten. I'm proud of being the president. I'm proud of NYC Gamers. I'm proud of my team, because none of this would be possible without them, because it's not a one-person job. I'm proud of my own coming out journey. I'm proud of, like, I have a lot to be thankful for. And I think that that's where my armor comes from, that confidence and that resilience, right? But I say all of that to acknowledge that it's okay to practice radical selfishness in a healthy way sometimes, right? So when we're out here pioneering our dreams and trying to make our hustle, our like get out of the 9 to 5, make this our thing and all that, I want that for us. Let's do that. Let's not stop. Let's fight against all odds and let's make that the thing. And throughout that journey, take time to really be selfish in that and to acknowledge that this is for you. Like, it's not just to better the community and it's not just to do that, all beautiful and valid things, but also you deserve this. I deserve this, you know? And that's kind of like my mantra that I go with. I'm like, I fucking deserve this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired of this shit.
I
self-care.
I say all the time, like, we put a positive spin on everything else that has self in front of it. Self-love, self-care, self-worth. So why is selfish like such a negative thing? Like,
okay, Matt.
Like
okay.
Raffy just said, like, when in like anything outside of moderation could be a bad thing. If I have fucking 10,000 blueberries, I'm probably not gonna make it through the other side of that. So it's like, obviously, like I always say, like, selfish isn't the issue. Is if my direct happiness is causing someone else sadness, that's where I draw the line. Like, I'm totally fine with inconveniencing the motherfucker. Sorry, shit happens. But like, if what makes me happy makes you sad, now I got to reevaluate some shit. Maybe I'm not doing things that could best benefit, you know, even myself. You know, doing harm to others, that shit sticks with you, whether you know it or not. But what I want to do, Raffy, because we had talked about a lot, but this was so much more important than, you know, us getting to, you know, bust it up about, you know, like anime and Harry Potter, which we're having that conversation.
Let's talk about it.
But what I want to do, Raffy, is we always tell all of our guests that once you come on once, you are a forever repeat guest for the DB4L podcast. But I know when we get into some Potter shit, this will go on for like another hour and a half. So what we're going to do, we are going to close it out for this, because I feel like this conversation was fucking amazing. And I'm so happy that we stayed here on this, because this is a conversation that deserved to have the amount of time that it got without us, you know, deviating and sidetracking and talking about other stuff. So what we're going to do, Ravi, is we want to have you back, because we still got to get into more anime. We definitely got to get into some Potter shit.
Let's do it.
You know, I want to get more into some gaming stuff.
Before the fall season.
Look, it'll be look, as soon as we stop here and record, we going to figure out a time for you to come back.
Right. The way Attack of Titans has got me in a chokehold right
look. All right, say less. This and then we gonna give Trav's gonna see Across the Spider-Verse by then, so we could get into all that.
Right.
So what we gonna do, Abby? We gonna end this episode today, and then we gonna have a part 2, and we'll keep it a lot more fun, lighthearted, you know, more centered. But like I said, I'm super happy. I'm over the moon with how this conversation turned out. I'm glad that we landed here and stayed here, because your story deserves to be told. Everybody that you represent, their story deserves to be told. The NYC Gamers and what you guys got going on. Look, we gonna blast this shit everywhere we can, because we want everybody to come out and support and show love, and not just come out because it's an event. We gonna action word. We are gonna be allies as an action word. It's not just something you say or put on your Instagram page. But right before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, please tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can support. Please plug the event that you have coming up again, because I want to make sure that I don't want nobody having an excuse that they didn't know about this part. So let the people know where they can find you, how they can support what you got going on.
Thank you so much. I'd be honored to come back. Y'all are.
You have to. You have no choice.
Y'all got some legendary energy. Don't stop doing this. This is incredible, right? I'm gonna have to subscribe and like get into all of this here. I gotta catch up, you know. So I'm loving this. As for me, my name is Raffy. You can find me on most social media like Twitter, Instagram, and all of that. Mostly Twitter. At Raffy Regulus or Raffy Regulus. So that's RAFFY REGULUS. You can also find me through NYC Gamers. All of our social media is at official NYCG, right? If you do a Google search for NYC Gamers, we'll pop up anyways. And if you want more information about our upcoming Gamer Pride event, check out our website, gamers.nyc. Or, come to Samsung 837 on Sunday, June 18th from 12 to 6 o'clock. It's a free event, open to all. There's even going to be a kids section. You know, I'm hoping that we can put a Mario movie or something up there, have a game there for kids to play, right? We're going to make it as inclusive and as open to the community as possible. Wait till y'all see us at Times Square, because apparently we're getting a Times Square billboard. And I'm so hyped about that.
I can't wait to see that.
Right? You know, so I'm really excited. We're a week and a half from the event. I hope to see y'all there for folks who can make it, you know?
Trav, you got any final words of wisdom for us before we close this bad boy out?
I don't have any final words of wisdom, but when we do have you back, you said you wanted to get into the politics of Dragon Ball, Bulma, and all that. Yeah, we're gonna table all that. Like, that's gonna be.
It's gonna be great.
I can't wait to hear your
Look,
full disclosure, I haven't sat down and seen in its entirety Dragon Ball Z Super. The new one, right?
That's fine.
Oh, Dragon Ball Super? Yeah, no, you're good.
We'll clip you in.
I'm caught up. I've pretty much seen all of it through TikTok anyways, and I know all that went on with the I'm here for it. I'm with it, you know?
You're good. You're good.
Look, we don't even need a creative brief for that one. We just gonna hit record and just go.
We're just gonna let it roll. But
we just gonna hit record and just go.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was a great discussion. And, you know, if we're ever in New York, if you're ever in Philly, you know.
Oh, nah, we gotta link up in Philly because can I just say this real quick? There's a spot, and I'm sure y'all know the name of it, all right? So work with me here.
We got you.
Okay.
South Philly. It's not too far from South Philly Barbacoa, and it's not far from the two cheesesteak spots that all the tourists go to, Pat's and
Gino's.
Okay, there's another cheesesteak spot, right? That's like in that area on a corner that you go inside, and the area where they're cooking everything, it's kind of like in the angle by the window, like by the front window of the restaurant. And they do like an authentic hoagie, right? With like the cheese whiz and all of that.
You're talking about Jim's.
Is that what it's called? Yo, I can never remember the name because they all named after white people with one syllable. And I'm just like, but that is my fucking spot.
So not to end this on like a sour note, but that bad boy caught on fire. It don't exist anymore.
Oh, my heart.
It's not back up?
Nah, Jim's on South Street. Yeah, they did.
Oh, that's my heart right there. You just broke it.
But look, I got you. So
we got spots for you though.
Not too far down. So my personal favorite cheesesteak spot is Ishka which is not too far down from Jim's. We got you. You good?
All right. Yeah, I will travel for a cheesesteak. It's a wrap.
Yeah, you were talking about Jim's.
When y'all come out, we going to the Bronx. We gonna take you to get a good bacon, egg, and cheese. It's a wrap.
Say less.
Let's get it.
Say less. All right, man. What an episode. What an episode. But lifers, we call you guys the lifers because you quite literally put the life into Dragon Ball for life. So for all things DB4L and for all things Raffy, we're gonna put everything in the almighty link tree of might that will be in the description of this episode. It'll be all over our socials on IG. We are going to make sure that this episode gets out before your event, June 18th, right? June 18th. We are going to make sure that this episode comes out before then, because like I said, we want to get as many eyes, ears, physical bodies, manifestations of bodies, astral projections, all of that. We won't get everybody there. All right. After images, we're going to get everybody there that we possibly can, and we are going to manifest it. This is going to be the first of many. We're going to add, this is going to be an annual thing. We're going to do this every year. Samsung, we're going to approve these video game stations. It's happening. Hold ourselves accountable.
Right.
Whoever owed them this $5,000 check, cut that shit.
Right.
Stop playing.
Stop playing with me.
Oh man, but right, we could talk to you all day, and if I don't close it out, we probably will talk to you all day. But we are going to definitely bring you back for part 2, super duper ASAP. So, lifers, this is not the last that you have heard of Raffy. It's probably not even going to be the second or the third. He gonna cut. We gonna get Raffy back mad times. I can already tell. But like we always say here on Dragon Ball for Life, whether you watch it or you read it, we all need it. So follow your fan gonna cut that part. So we just gonna open up our nerd eye, and we will see you next time on Dragon Ball for Life. Dodon Ray. Bow. Shout outs to super producer Mikey.
We love you, Mikey. And shout out to Yali.
All caps.
This is All for One. All is well, for I am here. And you've been listening to the Dragon Ball for Life podcast. Now, do it again.